Let's do Fire Force.
Yeah, I had forgotten about this little segment. I as a reader and someone who's
okay, so that was going to be my question. I was like, I thought this was a filler or like half filler episode.
So it's in fact not a filler episode at
all.
What? This definitely was a scene, and I was sort of thinking as I had started it, like, did this happen? And then there were a few parts that popped up that I actually remembered. So I think it's actually more of like a 1-to-1. Like sometimes they'll take like short conversations and draw them out, or shorten other parts. I'm pretty sure that like this is two complete chapters, and especially the thing that jogged my memory was the conversation between Huo Yan Lee and Shinra.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually pretty much word for word.
So
from the
that
manga.
was what I thought was. I thought that like if anything was going to be from the manga, it would have been the first half of the episode, and then that second half was kind of just like hee hee ha ha.
Well, even Iris doing like the muscle pose is from the manga as well.
Oh my god! Well, yeah, I'm not surprised because
yeah, and as well as the part at the second half with Assault, like that is also.
Oh my! That whole fucking. They really are just reducing Tamaki to just like ecchi relief. Like
I mean, that's kind of what she should be. To be fair,
I want possibilities. I want powers. Okay.
Well, I understand that. I think that here's the challenge. I mean, I'm not gonna I have my own problems with just like straight up fan service, and there's times when Fire Force just feels like it's from a different century. But if you have a gigantic ensemble cast, and you establish that there's plenty of comedy all over your universe, all over your show,
mm-hmm.
I don't mind that they're, on a team where, you have characters who drive the story, characters who support the progression of the story, and then characters for various, functional things like comic relief. I think it would be nicer if her character was closer to Vulcan, or even Arthur, because both of those balance some zany comedy with fairly serious feats.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, having someone like her on the squad for pure comic relief most of the time is fine. It doesn't take away too much from anything else that's happening in the story, and it reminds me of the I don't know, from Soul Eater, the other witch, the one that was not the frog, not the chick who did all like the frog powers, but like the cat, the black cat.
Oh yeah.
Like they're basically mirror images of the same character, and actually, that makes another segue point, because in this episode we also got a canonical Soul Eater cameo from Maka's dad during the sequence where Assault goes to the girls' club, and the conversation, you see the back of his head sitting behind him, talking about how his daughter Makami hates him. And so I like that in addition to like the smiling moon and other little things that are thrown in there, the little like death's head on like belt buckles and just little references to Soul Eater. This is like the closest you get to having a straight up cameo from another character. So again, if you think of like some of what you're seeing in Fire Force as like callbacks or mirror images or Funhouse mirror versions of characters from Soul Eater, then I'm fine with that kind of fan service and that kind of comic relief. But I agree with you, like every character is an opportunity for feats, and you gotta love some good feats.
Yeah. Oh well, I mean, if anything doesn't happen with her, I won't be surprised, because now I'm tuned the fuck on in because of that preview with Maki, and I'm like, oh shit, here comes that military background catching on up with her. I don't know who that was in the preview, but her dad or her brother, but they looked brolic. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, Maki is super cool. I just like this episode. This actually may be one of my favorite episodes because it's less about the action and more about a deeper exploration into the various characters dealing with a heavy topic. You
Oh
know,
my god, yes.
religious conviction, and faith is something that is difficult even for very intelligent people to discuss, especially because it's so personal. And that sort of first dive into it with Ho Yan Lee, where he's talking with Shinra, and typically in shows like, at least in my experience, is that if there's some giant conspiracy revolving around a religion, the thrust of the story is one in which it's sort of like a rejection or a negation of faith, and as a person who personally doesn't have any faith background at all, I appreciate that, but I know it's very uncomfortable for a lot of folks who are looking for other sorts of conversations, and this was one in which the characters basically struggle with, well, okay, if what I've been taught is a lie, but I still find value in in my beliefs and the activity, like, how can I go forward in this world and hold on to that without tacitly approving potentially like the worst possible sin of driving people to death?
Yeah.
And there were some very thoughtful answers to that prospect, which is something you don't typically get a lot of, and to have it sort of in a show like this, in an episode where we also got extreme comedy, fan service, literal pornography at the end,
literal,
is exciting from a juxtaposition, of themes. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, that was my favorite part of the episode, where they basically were calling into from their beliefs. They were just like, yeah, so it's basically like turning someone's world upside down, especially for Iris, because didn't early on in the first season, when like Hibana was being introduced, Hibana basically was like making fun of her because she already was like, you actually believe this shit? So like even people in the church already were kind of just like, this doesn't mean shit. Like, this is just a faux religion for them to cover to like control us. And I was like, well, blah, blah. And now that that's proven, it's like, oh, so now that you have like actual evidence that what you've been dedicating your life to, or I guess it's what's giving them like sanity. Because that's what I see it as. I see it as, for them, even for like Shinra, with their killing, like they always need the prayer and stuff like that. I'm like, you guys always need that prayer, stuff like that, because you still are killing people, and maybe it's a way for them to kind of like not actually come to terms with like killing people, and basically being like, this is all for the greater good, or like this is for God. And so there is a reason for this. It's like, okay, yeah, there is, but you did still just kill a person. And also the religion that says that you're gonna give them salvation through death is completely false. So what now?
Right. And they actually do this over and over again since season 1. This has been a theme of the regular people, so the non-fire soldiers, non-clergy of the world, genuinely derive a huge degree of support and relief from the practice of the religion, as it pertains to this absolutely horrifying world that they're living in, where people that you could just be having a conversation with your best friend, with your spouse, with your kid, and then suddenly they turn into a flaming monster that either kills you, well, certainly they are now gone, but they could also kill you and everyone else that you love, and it happens seemingly at random. It happens to anyone, as was evidence again in this episode, where the priest who you see praying to Soul 1 minute, and then the next minute he's turned into an infernal. The fact that like this is happening in this world, the people need something to hold on to make it all right, especially when your protectors are more or less just killing your family members in front of you, right? Like there's a necessity to perhaps the lie, or perhaps just the practice that's functional and practical and not mystical. So that's like one thing that they bring up a lot. And then to sort of dovetail with that, you also have the people who are doing the work understanding tacitly that if they didn't have the psychological support of the church and these organizations and their beliefs, then it would be very difficult for them to think of what they're doing as anything other than executions.
Yep.
And we
Absolutely.
know that factually, that is what they are doing, because in the bits where they were out in the mainland China, and they recognize the fact that, like, there are literally millions, if not billions, of people who are just out there in an unliving, undead, burning state, and that no matter what they're doing, you know, like, you can't get away from, Shinra says this a couple of times, can't get away from the fact that he's probably just killing people. And they've had Infernals who still had their sentient, you know, they had sentience and they had their memories. And so what is really the line between something like that and a functional person? The special powers they have? The fire soldiers all have, like, fire powers. So you really are just killing people. I mean, that's all it is.
Yeah.
So I like that this episode, again, and in much more, like, personal and direct ways, tried to grapple with the faith aspect and also come up with a reason why, even if you don't believe, even if the theology is a lie, the faith in something bigger need not necessarily be tied to that theology. So that was whole Yan Lee's sort of
which
thought
I get
on it. Yeah, and then Iris presented maybe a different point of view, which is that, you know, she understands that, like, it's probably not true, but what's most important is that her presence and her belief in other people calms them down, therefore she has value in and of herself, you know, and her general belief. That goes beyond just whether or not the evangelist, you know, manipulated the church into doing whatever it's doing. Basically, that shit doesn't matter. Like, that's the actual power of friendship, even though they don't spell it out that way, which is cool.
Yeah,
it's cool. So I'm with it. Good episode.
Yeah.
And again, Soul Eater cameos, further lending credence to the idea that if Soul Eater's universe was essentially heaven, then this Fire Force is like the same universe, but everyone's in hell. So there you go. There you go. What's next?